Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. To the Michigan fans who are checking this episode out, I'm sure many of y'all know what time it is, right? We are wrapping up the official visits. We are entering into what we call commitment season. And for this Michigan program, as it pertains to 2026, starting to get a pretty good feel of what names could be trending to Michigan and really what this Michigan class might look like come National Signing Day in the 2026 cycle. Let's get into it. Kind of an overarching view of what this 2026 class could look like come early December. We're going to talk about the names that we think are must gets for Michigan in the 2026 cycle, talk about some names that are certainly trending to Michigan at this point in time. I will say this before we get nitty gritty into the names we could start seeing come off the board. Give Sherrone Moore some time. If there's one thing that we learned from Sherrone Moore in that 2025 cycle, he is more than willing to create some fireworks come National Signing Day period. There's never really anything we saw from Jim Harbaugh. And look, I love Jim Harbaugh. I loved what he did for Michigan, brought us a national championship, but it was never something we saw from Jim, in terms of late surprises on the recruiting trail. It's something that Sherrone Moore certainly showed us last year. Guys like Bryce Underwood, guys like Jordan Young, guys like Ty Haywood, Shamari Earls. Keep in mind, Michigan always has that in their back pocket. What does it look like going into the summer? That's the conversation I want to get into now. Before we get into it, as always, the Michigan fans, we're going to talk about some of the names that we would like to see most in the 2026 cycle. Let it fly in the comment section. If you want to put your top five, put your top five. We'll chop it up. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. To the Michigan fans, man. It's been a freaking blast talking this program on the recruiting trail. The amount of support that y'all have shown the fellas has been amazing. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Buckle up. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with, what I think is pretty clearly Michigan's number one target on their board, regardless of position, regardless of side of the football, it's Savion Hyder. And I think Michigan taking the commitment of Jonathan Brown over the weekend, kind of a lower ranked 3-star diamond in the rough kind of running back. I think that even more signifies Michigan's commitment in terms of it's Savion Hyder or bust, because there's not really another running back that Michigan's keeping warm. There's not really another running back that Michigan's even going after that much. I think it's Savion. And we've learned from Sherrone Moore, if there's a player he wants, he's not afraid to push his chips in and go out and get that player. And I think it's very clear that Savion Hyder is that guy for this Michigan program. Look, this is just me, maybe Michigan fans, maize and blue tinted glasses. I feel like Michigan's going to get this one done because it really is the top priority for Michigan in the 2026 cycle. Wide receiver position. This is something that fires me up. And quite frankly, this is a very intriguing storyline for Michigan where, look, it's been historically a very hard position for Michigan to recruit just because of the style of offense, the two tight end sets, the run heavy. You've heard recruits at the high school ranks talk about, hey, there's just not a ton of opportunity to get the football and be productive in this Michigan offense. Well, with the addition of Chip Lindsey, with the addition of Bryce Underwood, I think that perspective or that notion of thinking is starting to change a little bit. Now you have Jalen Pyle committed. He's been a long time commit to Michigan. Travis Johnson and Zion Robinson. The way I look at it, I think Michigan is the team to beat for both of these prospects, both of which are top 150 nationally ranked guys. I mean, when's the last time? And it might have been a little bit sooner than I remember. I can't remember the last time Michigan's been in it, or at least has landed two top 100, top 150 national prospects. Both of them are bigger guys, right? Both of them are around 6'3". Both of them are around 180 pounds. It's been very clear that Sherrone Moore has valued size in that wide receiver room. Now, Travis Johnson, to me, the more polished, well-rounded wide receiver, a guy that can separate at all three levels, be dynamic with the football in his hand, has the production on Friday nights to back it up. And then Zion Robinson, he's kind of the tradesy guy, right? He's 6'3", 6'4". He's a $180. Has really, really good track and field profile. I believe he's a state champ in the high jump. sign me up for both of them. And I love the balance. You get a guy that's a little bit more polished than Travis Johnson. You got a guy that's a little bit more upside in Zion Robinson. Like them both for different reasons. Then the question is, what does it look like with both CJ Sadler and Calvin Russell? Is Michigan going to go all in for Calvin Russell? Is the question now. Calvin Russell's upside is absolutely immense. He's a 3-sport athlete, legitimate hooper, probably would play basketball for Michigan as well if he does come to Michigan. And everything we're hearing is, look, is Michigan probably the dark horse in the recruitment? Yeah, absolutely. Is there more buzz around LSU and Miami at this time? Yeah, absolutely. But it does you kind of get the feeling that Michigan is more than willing to be aggressive enough to go out and land Calvin Russell. And this is just the kind of player that Michigan doesn't often land, especially at the wide receiver position. And for me personally, that would kind of be the cherry on top. Do I love Calvin Russell like some others? No, probably not. But do I love the upside and fully recognize that we just don't have enough of these kind of bodies? Yeah, I fully recognize that and would be freaking fired up if Calvin Russell comes to Michigan. And then CJ Sadler, I don't know what's going on with CJ Sadler, and I ain't going to pretend like I know what's going on. We'll see if he ends up in Michigan's class. Number 1 kid in the state of Michigan. I think he would be a very, very good nickel corner or slot wide receiver. We'll see what goes on there. That's why I have the asterisks on both of those names. I feel like, hey, if Michigan wants him, I think they have the capability of going out and getting them. Does Michigan want to push their chips in for either of these guys? We're going to find out over the next couple of weeks. Calvin Russell committing July 5th. Tight end position locked up, like where we are. I'm a monster fan of Matt Ludwig, and shout out Coach Kasula, man. One of the sneaky conversations here, there were some dynamite hires by Sherrone Moore. Now, I think the jury's still out on a few. I think Grant Newsome on the offensive line, jury might be still out. Brian G. Marie, jury might be still at the linebacker position. Lou Esposito crushing it. Lamar Morgan crushing it. Steve Kasula crushing it. I think Sherrone Moore, with the amount of hires that Sherrone Moore had to make, and I'm kind of going on a tangent, so I apologize. Sherrone Moore had to make a lot of hires in a very quick time when Jim Harbaugh left. I know the Kurt Campbell one is going to get a lot of national media buzz for being a miss, and it certainly was a miss. There were a lot of other really good hires that I thought Sherrone Moore made during his first year of his tenure of coaching Michigan. All right, to the offensive line. I'll say this. Do I fully recognize that the line of scrimmage play is going to be the reason why Michigan is national championship caliber for the next couple of years? Yeah, absolutely. And Sherrone Moore is going to want to build this program from the line of scrimmage out. I also recognize that I thought Michigan signed a dynamite offensive line class over the last 2 years. And I think the young talent in the offensive line room is absolutely loaded. And so I look at it and say, yeah, I want some of the names that are on the board. How many names that are going to come to Michigan? That's the question. The fun part is I think Michigan's got a chance at all 4 of the names that are not currently committed. Which one do we want to see join Michigan's class the most? To me, it's probably a guy like John Turntine. And what I love about John Turntine from Texas is there's versatility there. I look at Malachi Lee and Kelvin Abba and say those are straight up tackles. They can't play guard, certainly can't play center. You probably can't put them anywhere outside of the tackle position. I look at John Turntine and say, I think he could be a damn good tackle, but I also think he'd be a really, really good guard too. And because of that versatility, that's probably where I lean if I'm going to pick one that Michigan can land. If Michigan can go 2 out of 4, or we got 4 names there. Yeah, 2 out of 4. What I think would be a solid class for Michigan in the 2026 cycle, and 3 out of 4 would be freaking dynamite. Malachi Lee committing at the end of the week today, or this week. Defensive line. To me, this is the premium position that Michigan needs to get right. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, and I absolutely love where Michigan sits right now. Titan Davis and Alistair Vallejo. You won't find bigger fans of those 2 cats than myself. Have both of those guys locked in the middle of that defensive line. I'm a fan of both Tariq Bonney and Mikael Blade. What I'm looking at here is more in the middle of that defensive line. I want both of these guys. And I know that's a big interior defensive line class. I am a monster fan of Deuce Gerald's, and I truly believe that Michigan might be kind of flying under the radar in that recruitment. And then I look at Ben Boulware and say, go out and add him. I think Michigan can get him if they want him. And I look at it and say, well, Titan Davis, Alistair Vallejo, much more penetrating three techs, as is Deuce Gerald's. Well, Ben Boulware's that big nose. You know, that guy that's going to be head up on the center with a shade and kind of be that dirty work dude. Is he going to be as productive and as flashy as Alistair Vallejo or Titan Davis? No, probably not. I think he can do the dirty work at an extremely high level. Those kind of guys, in my opinion, are important for any defense. So I would love Ben Boulware to go along with Titan Davis and Alistair Vallejo. And then at the edge, I feel like it's Carter Meadows. And I feel like Michigan really likes him. And there is some monster upside with Carter Meadows. And I'll say this, Carter Meadows kind of reminds me of David Ajabo. It's going to take a couple of years. He certainly needs to fill out that frame, but it's a freaking monster ceiling with Carter Meadows. And the conversation I think Sherrone Moore is probably going to have with that is, all right, well, we're probably going to have to allocate some significant resources to Carter Meadows. Do we want to allocate significant resources to a kid that might not play for the first 2 years? We'll see what Michigan decides to do. I would love to see Carter Meadows on Michigan. Linebacker position. This is probably the one of the bigger concerns here. You know, I love Nick Abrams. He's by far my number one linebacker for Michigan. He's 6'1", he's 225, 34-inch arms, flies around the football field. If there's one linebacker that I want Michigan to go out and take, it's Nick Abrams. And I think it's kind of an important position to get right as well, because you look at it and say, all right, Ernest Hausman, Jay-Sean Barham, they're going to the NFL after this year. Now we feel good about a guy like Cole Sullivan or Nate Boateng. Feel good about Chase Taylor. Probably want to add at least two linebackers in this class, and we'll see. I think Markel Dabney's probably trending to Michigan. Who's the other name going to be? I would love to see. I think Michigan has some ground to make up on Nick Abrams. Nick Abrams freaking rocks, and would love to see Michigan go out and get Nick Abrams. Secondary. Things are trending in the right direction for Dorian Barney. And this one, I think Michigan had a lot of ground to make up heading into the official visit. It sounds like Michigan made up that ground. Really, really polished dude. Now, he doesn't have the athletic profile that a Shamari Earls did or that Jaden Sanders did last class. Really polished football player that's played some really good football down there in the state of Georgia 7A football. This is a guy that is playing some of the best high school football across the country, is one of the best players in the state. It can't go wrong with the guy that you feel like just has such a solid floor. It's so easy to see Dorian Barney being a multi-year starter for Michigan over the next couple of years at the boundary cornerback spot. I don't think it's a monster deal, because I look at the secondary class that Michigan brought in last cycle, Shamari Earls and Jaden Sanders, Elijah Dotson, Keona Winston, Jordan Young. I think it was a really strong class. I don't think it's going to be as big, but can you go grab some of the bigger targets on your board? I would be surprised if Brody Jennings sticks. So I think Dorian Barney suddenly becomes a very important name for Michigan. Safety. Couple of names that intrigue me. I think Chase Calcutt's probably going to Texas or Georgia. I love Celesi Moa. We'll see. That's a really hard recruitment to kind of gauge. I really do like him. I like Andre Clark. I like Donovan Webb. You land two of those cats, and look, two cornerbacks, two safeties. I know it's not a massive class, but you don't need a massive class. In fact, I would prefer Michigan. Hey, go get some guys you like at that position, but I would be allocating a little bit more of my resources to probably on that defensive line, because we got some heavy hitters that I'd like to see end up in Michigan's 2026 cycle. I think the priority is going to be along the lines of scrimmage, Savion Hyder, and the wide receiver position. Now, why is that? I think defensive line, from a personnel standpoint, Michigan needs to, restock the young talent, restock the shelves of young talent on the defensive line. And then I think Savion and the wide receivers, look, you're getting 3 years of Bryce Underwood, and you want to make sure he's got all the talent necessary to be successful. And you also want to capitalize on the buzz of Bryce Underwood. And so Bryce Underwood, he's a guy that these kids want to go play with. And so go capitalize on that on the recruiting trail and go grab as much talent as you can, especially at a wide receiver position that historically has been a very tough position for Michigan to recruit. And I think what excites me the most about that position is, all right, what if it looks much better with Chip Lindsey and Bryce? Then all of a sudden, hey, these wide receivers are giving more of Michigan a look because, over the last couple of years, they just haven't. We'll see how it ends up. It's going to be a really fun next couple of weeks. If you're a Michigan fan that enjoys the recruiting trail, dial in. Going to be really fun. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.